Welcome to part 2 of my ODM tutorial series for MG. If you haven't already watched part 1, I explained the inner workings of ODM and how it is used to generate speed. I highly recommend giving that a watch to provide context for the rest of this series. While the gap cut isn't necessarily anything too crazy, it is by far the simplest and most important time save on the track. Irrespective of how well you drive everywhere else, you have to know how to jump the gap with the shooting star to save the most time. Just like the Flame Runner, there are multiple ways to perform the gap cut. One of the easiest methods involves taking a wide line and hopping at the edge to make it to the other side. This involves taking a wide drift toward this part of the gap, shrooming before entering the off-road while still holding the drift, and then hopping over the gap. I find a spin drift hop to be easiest. You can also do this with a brief wheelie through the off-road. Do whichever you find to be the most comfortable. If you will be performing Star ODM the following lap, hold the drift from the hop for a brief moment upon landing, and then immediately wheelie. If you do not want to go for Star ODM, hold the drift for a bit longer such that you are able to redrift to the right and charge an MT, using a brief left drift to realign with the grass edge up ahead. For those just starting out on the track, take this normal line. It takes a good understanding of ODM to consistently get good start segments, and that will be covered in a later video. You can also take the wide line using TF physics. An important thing to note, however, is that TF physics do not work very well for ODBs while maintaining a drift. This is because TF physics rely on the lean effect to generate additional airtime, and ODBs, unlike Flame Runner, cannot generate nearly as much roll to exploit the lean effect during a drift. What you can do instead is perform the TF input and release the drift at the same time. This allows you to easily clear the gap, as the slidey physics of ODBs amplifies the TF physics. Simply aim for the same spot you would for the hop method. The bike continues to slide to the right after you land, and I wasn't able to get any good lines with it. I found that you can fix this by landing in a counter drift, and then briefly redrifting to a line for either the Star ODM or the normal line. This method is the fastest out of the wide methods to make it to the line, but the redrift causes it to lose time after the line, putting it on par with the other two wide methods. The next best way to take the gap cut is what I do in my current record. The jump is fairly precise both input and alignment wise. Because I am covering the gap cut before covering ODM in the cavern, all that I can offer for now is to create save states roughly around here to practice alignment from various positions and angles. Note that you will have to get accustomed to the slidey nature of ODBs for this method, as this has to be accounted for when drifting into the proper spot. To get enough distance for the tight cut, your target is this particular piece of geometry, where the triangular pieces of the track's collision intersect at the edge. For tighter entries, spin drifting into the right line helps give the correct angle, at least in my experience. You'll get a feel for exactly when you need to initiate the drift as you practice, but you generally want to start it around here. Perform adjustments as necessary, such that you are aligned at about a 45-degree angle with respect to the grass, with the edge of the gap wall near the center of your screen. Release the drift just before the grass, wheelie and shroom at the same time, and hold neutral on the stick briefly. Once you are at the edge, you need to hop and hold the stick top right, and do not spin drift. Spin drifting rotates your bike too much and makes the landing awkward. Hold the top right input until just before you land on the other side, and then hold hard left. Trust the shooting star's handling during the shroom boost. It's much better than you'd think. Finally, realign for the next lap before the shroom boost runs out using either a hop or raw handling. As I was writing the script for this video, I had the stupid idea to try the tight gap cut hopless using TF physics. Later that same day,
You can. No way. You can do it hopless.
yeah, you can do hopless with the shooting star, and it saves time over the hop method because you slide into the perfect line for the Star ODM instead of needing to realign with a hop or by handling. Similar to the hop method, you want to aim for this same spot. This time, however, you need to hold a hard left drift, and therefore will need to swing a bit wider to have a favorable line. You must be holding hard left entering the gap to exploit the entirety of the TF physics. Hold the drift until you are just about to enter the off-road. Shroom while still holding hard left, and flick to the right just before you cross the edge. I found more consistency with a top right input compared to a hard right input. Once you land, adjust your line as necessary with handling to the left or right, and wheelie as soon as you can. With proper adjustments, you will slide into the perfect line for the next lap start ODM. If you can get good at this method, it will save upwards of 0.3 on laps 2 and 3. Lap 1 is essentially the same as the hop method, as all of the time save is in the better line for the start ODM, which is only effective the following lap. If you are feeling really lucky, the fastest way you can take the gap cut is with a wall clip. For this one, you need to rotate the bike such that the back wheel can clip the cliff wall. This is best done with a spindrift and bottom left tail dive. Clipping the wall kills the rightward momentum, allowing you to immediately counterdrift once you land. Depending on how you clip, you can occasionally go inside the stocks to save even more time. This is generally going to be a Hail Mary strat for when you enter the gap cut too far left. I haven't fleshed out the landing for usage on laps 1 or 2, but I can imagine this being used on lap 3 or flap, where the landing isn't too important. There is, however, a small yet consistent time save available for the flap and third lap of the 3-lap categories if you don't opt for the hopless strategy. When taking a tight line or a clip cut, you can instead perform a wide counterdrift upon landing and hold it through the line. This saves a couple of frames over wheeling straight. Surprisingly, hitting the stocks isn't an issue in most cases. Unless you have a really tight line, the bike will slide to the right before gripping the ground during the counter drift. This is not used at the ends of laps 1 and 2 because it does not favor a good line to initiate the start ODM. Realistically, the best strategy is to perform the hopless on laps 1 and 2 to save time on lap 2 and 3 start ODM respectively, and then to use the hop method with a counter drift on lap 3. If you want to play unnecessarily risky after already surviving the track for a full 3 laps, clipping the gap lap 3 and counter drifting into the line can save another 0.1 to 0.2. The keen among you might have noticed a striking similarity between inputs required for hopless gap cut and the inputs I perform for ODM everywhere else. If that was you, congrats! You now know the fundamentals of ODM everywhere else on the track. It's literally just TF physics, caused by the lean effect, but with a different vehicle. I'm not even exploiting anything fundamentally new here. If you want to learn how to properly perform ODM on the mushroom pads, stay tuned for the rest of the series. The next video will cover the cavern, with an emphasis on learning optimal execution of ODM and the changes you can progressively make as you come to better understand the technique. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.